Yeah, Doug, it's we're just waiting. We're waiting to we're having a little trouble simulcasting on YouTube. So, Jeremy, what's the word on that?
For what it's worth, it says webinar is now streaming live on YouTube.
We are now live on YouTube. We resolved the problem.
Okay,
Doug,
great.
Doug, I've made you co-host so you could share your screen at the appropriate time. Dan, whenever you're ready, again, I should call roll whenever it's time.
Yeah, that'll be good. Doug, just so I clear on roles for this, you are going to be leading the presentation and then handing off to other people.
I'll hand off as needed, but otherwise I would do the main presentation. Yes.
Okay, thanks. Jeremy, yeah, proceed with business.
Okay, I'm going to mute everybody. And I'm going to call the roll for the committee. I'm only going to call the committee members, not all the board members. When I call your name, please unmute yourself and acknowledge that I called your name, and then mute yourself again. If you are a board member but not a committee member, I will note your attendance, but I'm not going to call your name right now. Dan Murphy?
Here.
Thank you. Sandra Alfonso? Nicholas Azadian?
Here.
Thank you. Joan Body?
Here.
Thank you. Jalixa Camposano? Justin Collins? David Estrada? Cynthia Gonzalez? Hector Gonzalez? I thought I just saw Hector. I see Hector raised his hand for that. Okay, I've got you. Beverly Kleiman. Antoinette Martinez.
I'm present.
Thank you. Marilyn Melman. John Santori. Cynthia Vandenbosch.
Present.
Thank you. Katie Walsh. Fred Wolf. All yours, Dan.
Thank you. Okay, so we have a presentation, another presentation. I'm not quite sure if that means 2 this year or 3 this year on the Made in New York campus, formerly known as Bush Terminal, or currently known, currently known as Bush Terminal still by some of us. Doug Steiner from Steiner Studios, you've got a lease on the place for a while. You're going to talk to us about the PDA and some design applications you made and where they stand right now. Is that what we're going to hear? You're on mute, bud.
Yeah, basically update everybody on where we are and show you where we are. So.
Okay. Okay, Doug. So it's.
Dan, before we continue, may I just tell folks, this was originally going to be a joint committee meeting. There is going to be a second part of this with the Parks Committee. There was going to be a second presentation, but that's not taking place tonight. That will take place at some undetermined date, likely in October.
Yeah. And follow back with Jeremy or the Parks Committee Chair about what happened there. But I think there was a delay in some of in some of those designs or something. But Doug, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Let me see if I can do this.
There's a green button at the bottom of your screen. There you go.
Yeah.
We can see it.
Yep, let me just see if I can get full view. No, I had it a minute ago, just to be the page display.
Doug, full screen mode. It's right in that same drop down there.
In view?
Yeah, full screen mode.
Got it. Okay. I'm sorry I couldn't blur my background. I tried to clean up the back of my office a little bit so you don't know how messy it is. You have no idea how messy it is. And my pages are a little out of order, and I've never driven the train like this, so I hope I can do this okay. This is our project on the South Campus of Bush Terminal, Made in New York campus, running from roughly 41st to 50th Street. And I'm going to go backwards a little bit. Just to refresh everybody's memory as to what we're doing that's not architectural plans and elevations. We are working with the South Brooklyn Industrial Development Group. We are working with Brooklyn Workforce and Innovations for training, the Made in New York Production Assistant Program out of the Mayor's Office of Media and Entertainment. And the Mayor's Office also has a post-production program, and we'll be working with all 4 of those groups as part of our project. We have a 10-week internship program where we put people through all the different phases of our operation. So they get a taste of each thing, whether it's accounting or stage operations. We are working with the local organizations to make sure we're responsive to the needs of the community and that we make full use of the community. And Debbie Feinberg, whose face you might have just seen, is our liaison for working with the education component that we plan to have and to tie in to train people for this field, which we think is a great field for New York and a great way to earn a living. Oops. Some of the things that I want to mention and bring up again, we do have some significant minority and women-owned business enterprise hurdles for our construction, and we have been successful with that in our other projects. We will be making annual contributions to the Mayor's Office of Media and Entertainment, as it says, to address gender equity and I can't think of the right word, but inclusivity and gender equity. And we will have a space in the complex for not-for-profits in that space as well. The other things are, we expect to create about 2,200 permanent jobs and about 1,200 construction jobs. So some notes here. This field pays on average $90,000. It's a unionized workforce, and it's about $90,000 plus benefits, really good benefits, and nearly half of the workforce does not have a 4-year degree. And in terms of how good it is for the economy in New York, it's $3.9 billion of spending in New York. This says 48,000 jobs, but I think it's 82,000 jobs, direct and indirect. The main union local is Local 52. And from 2004 to 2017, it went from 1 million hours worked to 7.1 million hours worked in a year. And the hours per member from 900 to 1,700. The growth in Local 817, which is the Teamsters, number of members went up 147%, earnings 242%, and benefits 250%. And the production unions are at virtually full employment. So we think it's a great opportunity to grow the business, both for employment purposes and for the economic impact, local, regional, statewide. All right. You're all familiar with the site, but just to show you the context, it's along the waterfront, backs up to Bush Terminal Piers Park, and runs along First Avenue. To the south, immediately to the south, is a sanitation department facility, and those trucks park along 51st Street. Along First Avenue is a rail yard, still active, not super frequently, but several carloads a week. And the Port Authority controls that piece, and the piece at our southern boundary So everything as to the south boundary will be finalized with the Port Authority and subject to their approval and cooperation. And along First Avenue, the rail yard, it's chain link fence with barbed wire. From time to time, there's trains. There's no saying when the trains will be there, when they won't be there, how big they are, how long they are, etc. But that's really masking much of the front of our project. View looking north. View looking south. Now our plan is to keep the two buildings at the south end. Those are buildings 58 and 57, running north to south to north. And we will be taking down the red brick building. We could not make it work for any of our uses, for stages, for support space, or for parking, and building two new buildings in its place. There's a parking structure that we're showing for about 550 cars, plus the surface lot. And the area in front of the stages is really used by trucks for loading, unloading, outdoor shoots, all kinds of logistics. There's 10 to 20 trucks per production. And we have probably about 6 to 8 productions at a given time, 4 to 8, depending on the size of the production. The idea is all of our parking is self-contained. Nobody is adding to the mess on First Avenue and environs. This is, can I get, okay. This is our front elevation facing the community. Well, the view for our clients would be looking towards the harbor. We wanted everyone to be looking at the community and using our front door, not our back door. Buildings 58 and 57 on the left, then the parking structure, and then the two stage buildings. The two stage buildings have along the front a ribbon of support space, and at the north end, mid-rise 7-story building of support space. Behind that ribbon along the front of the 3-story space are 4 stages in each of those 2 buildings. The buildings will be brick, reddish brick. We think that's in keeping with the character of the neighborhood. Looks great for New York. It is different than what you'd find in LA, and it should look like it's always been there, and not a suburban office park. This is the rear elevation. You see the mid-rise sections, the rear 57, 58, the parking structure, and what you see as a mural is really to be determined mural. And we will be working with people who have worked in the mural field, large outdoor murals in this country, to help us work on a process with the community and with the approval of the Public Design Commission to come up with the best mural or murals for the back of those 2 buildings. This is what we hope will be our iconic entry gate. People work their whole lives to drive onto the lot where nobody else can get in. It's elitist and a private enclave, but it also serves our needs for security and privacy because these companies are in the business of intellectual property. The worst thing is if any of the things they're working on leaks out into the general press. So part of what we offer is an LA lot style experience for them, and that starts with driving through the iconic gate. We think this has a good presence on the street and represents the industrial heritage of the Brooklyn waterfront. That's what we would put at First Avenue. The actual gate with the arms and the guards screening people comes farther in, which you can see on our site plan coming up. But this is just to have some street presence and the experience people want. This is our site plan, and First Avenue is here. This is the entry gate that we just showed you. The road comes here. The entry gate is here. you guys can see my cursor, I'm assuming. And they're either parking here or going into the parking structure. We want to minimize the traffic through the site because people are wheeling stuff all day. They're walking around, they're doing stuff out here, and we don't want cars going through. We do have a loop road for the trucks. They'll come around and come back out. The rail yard I was talking about is here. This is our substation. We require a lot more power than I think EDC realized. So the substation is a little bit larger than originally planned, and we rotated it 90 degrees so that it doesn't block the view more because of that increase in size to handle the equipment that we have. This is the mini North Campus. I'm not sure what stage they're at right now, no pun intended, in the construction of that. For additional facilities, I think, in production, as well as fashion and mostly fashion, photography. You can see 57 and 58 are support spaces. So that could be mill shops, wardrobe shops, offices, post-production offices, props and set dressing. In these support spaces, the same types of spaces, plus dressing rooms, hair and makeup rooms, wig rooms, artist scenic workshops. They could also be here. And then back of house stuff is in here as well. The stages are roughly 16,000 feet each, 1 story. And then the support space in front is 3 stories. This space is 7 stories. Same thing here, 3 stories, 7 stories, 1 story, but the 1 story stage is equal to 3 very high stories in front. Give you an idea of what the stage looks like. In a cross section, it's 35 foot clear under what you think of as a catwalk, we call a grid. That would be the grid. And the dressing rooms and hair and makeup are right off there. We have an internal stair. They can come right in. Or if they want to associate with the riffraff, they come down on the common elevator and go in. And then above that is production offices, dimmer rooms, and all the uses I just talked about. The substation itself, 70 by 100. It's on steel columns to be floodproof, resilient, and it will be screened from view. This is the plan of what is sitting on this steel grating. I'm not sure how high it is, but it's up high enough to survive, I think, a 500-year, at least a 100-year flood event. And while we will be screening it from view, the view isn't really, it's ironic we're screening it because we're looking through a chain link fence with concertina wire or tanker cars or other railroad cars, but we still screen it. And it will be visible from the park side. So it'll be screened, as I said. This is basically just wire mesh screening. From above, this slide is slightly hard to read. The buildings will all have solar roofs, except for one area, which will be a green rooftop terrace in this area, because all these people who are facing the BQE don't really get a chance to see the harbor and the skyline. So this gives them a chance to go up there and experience the waterfront. People in here get to see it, and here, which is part of what drove our design, and then the rear of these buildings. But this way, it's a nice way for everybody to be able to experience it for lunch or dinner, or whatever they're doing whenever they break shooting for the day, in between shoots. And we think we will carry a lot of our needs for electric with that solar panel roof system. Some of the landscaping as you come in, our entrance is over here. You come in, it's pretty much screened from view with quaking aspens on a staggered layout. Likewise, over here towards the float bridge parcel, which the Port Authority controls and is an entrance to the park. In here is loading and whatnot for 57 and 58, 58, 57. And this is a little bit of a feature area at the entrance to the parking structure. The cars go in here, but this is an area for people to eat lunch as well, or just hang out, depending on how much time they have, whether they can go up to the roof or not. And you know, both will be open all the time for them. The privacy requirements, as I alluded to before, are heavy. So what we have been able to develop is a screen fencing and landscaping behind that screen so that they get the privacy, because there's stars walking around, security needs are high, not just the intellectual property concerns, but physical safety for the talent. The site has been built up because of flood resiliency requirements. And then the screen wall goes above it with planting behind it. So this is between the North Campus and the South Campus. This is, let me see if I can X this out. This is on the north end of our site along the park. You get a sense of the scale. And we have a rain garden planted here. We'll be supplementing that rain garden that already exists for this entire stretch and finishing it down here. And rather than a simple retaining wall, we made it look like blocks and masonry design. Page down. Oh, hang on, glitch. Okay, this is farther down along the park, and our site slopes, so it's less high as you go south. But the idea is to screen it from view. Page down is not working. And from the float bridge parcel around here, this is what you're seeing. From the park side, this is the rain garden that we were talking about. So it's 4 feet of screening with the screen wall or fence, 34 feet of distance of rain garden. The bike trail or bike path is 10 feet. There's a planting bed, I believe it's 10 feet, and then the walking path. So we are 45 feet to here, 50 feet when you add the 4 feet. And we are seeking to mask the trucks that go there and also screening just in general. These are representative pictures of the landscaping elements that go into that rain garden, or in the case of the quaking aspens, there might be the next page, but these are the different varieties that are going in the planting along the park, the common boundary of the park and the rear of our project, and also on site. Some more. The idea is to have color all times of the year, variety of types of leaves and blossoms. A view from First Avenue, not the whole project, but it gives you a good sense of scale from a pedestrian's perspective. Looking south on First Avenue, this is our South Stage building, the parking structure, which has a glass core, and then buildings 57 and 58. The bike path along the park, the rear of our stage buildings, the mural, although the mural, as I said, will not necessarily be this design, but something that's a joint effort among the parties to work out what's best. Another view. And this is ultimately what it is in scale, given the context of where we are in Sunset Park on the waterfront and what lies beyond us. And we are very excited. We are hoping to start construction this spring. And with that, I will open it up to whatever you guys want to talk about, really. I'll leave the screen on here. It's the same as was before. Debbie Feinberg, if you can't find this or lose it, you can always call our office and we're happy to get you in touch with Debbie. That is our presentation, and I guess I'll leave this up for whatever you want to ask about.
Doug, who else is with you? Who's joining you? Deb Feinberg is from your organization, right?
Debbie Feinberg is with us and is our government relations community liaison, among other hats that she wears. Ben Tressler is our project manager. Juliet Cullen-Chung runs the real estate development side of our business, which is a hybrid of studio and non-studio work. And I think that's who we have on the phone today.
Okay. Anybody from EDC here? Or they basically, you signed the lease, so you're on your own with them, and is that how it's working right now?
Yeah.
We can't yell at them anymore. We gotta bring our problems directly to you.
For better or worse, yes. But
Okay.
I'm not
Just so we
pass it on to them.
so we know who to talk to, and you know who you're talking to. Thanks, Doug. I want to open it up for questions from our panel members. I'm going to start with Nick Azadian, then go to Kate Walsh, and we'll go on from there.
And Katie was first.
Okay, Katie. You're on mute, Kate. Catherine.
Great. Thank you. I'm doubling. Thanks, Nick. How many trucks do you guys have planning on going to the site every day?
I don't know the count. I know we're working it out with DOT, but compared to the number of square feet here, it's really a very small portion. And they generally are off hour because when they shoot on location, they're out very early in the morning, or they do night shoots, and it's not a rush hour type business. Let's say we had 8 productions with 20 trucks each, which I think is a high number. They would not be all there on the same day because of the flexibility of shooting schedules, and they did not necessarily go out on the street at all when they're shooting on the lot. So it's very low intense use for that number of square feet.
Okay, so 20 trucks a day, most, one time in, one time out. And what size are these, and what kind of trucks do you guys use?
They range from box trucks to honey wagons. Honey wagon is a euphemism for bathrooms in the business. There are star campers. There are trucks carrying like the tractor trailers and box trucks, various lengths. But generally, not all are out on the same day, and it's once out, once back.
Okay, are these electric?
Not right now.
Is there a commitment? Has Steiner made any announcements around what trucks they're using in the future?
We are a hotel. We are a boutique hotel for an industry to create its product. We don't rent. We don't supply them. We don't buy the trucks. We don't staff the productions. That is up to the production companies and the major LA studios. And I think they are moving that way, but I couldn't tell you what their timetable is for that here or in LA.
Okay. Okay, so these are diesel generating trucks that could be semi-trailers down to box trucks is what's going to come down on that is what we have. And we're not exactly sure of the number per day, but you're thinking it could be only 20 capped.
No, I'm said per production, and figure we have 4 to 8 productions, but they're not all shooting on the same day on location. Sometime over the course of a production, starts with essentially no trucks. And then they add trucks as it goes on. A production is 3 months to 9 months. They add some more trucks. They scale back. And the trucks are there during the shooting schedule. Separate from that, we get some deliveries, not a whole lot. We have carting that happens at night. But I don't know our truck generation offhand, but we can make those available.
Okay, so you'll make available the truck generation, I think, per day. And right now these are diesel trucks. Then the second question I have is the entrance on 51st. I saw you have the Steiner Studios entrance. This is the bike pedestrian entrance that goes around into the park. Is that still preserved on this? And I see that you have the main entrance on that side right near that entry.
Let me go back to that. We have our entrance at 50th, and we are relocating the entrance to the park through the float bridge parcel. Right now it's real tight to this site, and it will be through here, separate and apart from our entrance.
So right now it kind of juts out and turns, and you're saying what exactly is going to happen with it? Where is it going to go?
What juts out and turns? What are you referring to?
So there's an entrance to the park right at 51st to the park for pedestrians. There's two ways to get into Bush Terminal Park.
It's not on 51st, it's on First, I believe. It's here. Well, it's like here, and it goes right along the perimeter of the site. And instead of being along the perimeter, it's being moved a little bit to the south.
Doug, if I might add, currently the driveway to our site, the entrance to our site is located where the current entrance to this existing campus is. So it's exactly in line with 50th Street, right? The entrance that Catherine is talking about to the south entrance to the park is currently located at that entrance, and it's only separated by a row of bollards. We are going to move that entrance further to the south to further separate it from our entrance and protect it from traffic in and out. That's what Doug was referring to, that it's going to be moved into what we call the float bridge parcel, which is this area in the red dashed outline there. So we are going to relocate the south entrance that is currently there.
By 50 feet, by 100 feet? How far are you moving it over? There's rail lines that are there right now. It's kind of like overgrown grass. And then right there you have the sanitation department entrance is where they are in and out. So I'm just trying to get a sense of like how much over are you guys talking about changing that entrance into the park?
It's 50 to 100 feet. It won't be right at that corner. But it'll be, somewhere in that zone between 50th and 51st Street, not a major change.
Okay. So what I'm trying to understand is, we know it's diesel trucks that are coming in and out, and we're talking about size and scale and frequency, and understanding what the change is, and understanding that there's pedestrian access there. So just some things, there's other comments I'll let other people go, and if there's time for questions, but things that I'm hearing and things that I'm seeing in the presentation is diesel trucks in and out, not a commitment from Steiner Studios in terms of already a heavily, air pollution quality community, and especially down there. And I'm not hearing anything different that's happening as in terms of commitments, even to the studios. So it's more of the same. And we also are a community that has had a significant number of fatalities and, dangerous on first, on second, on third. And I'm not hearing or seeing anything that reflects safety considerations or corridors. So I'll kind of keep those comments there and would like to come back to them, but there's nothing in the presentation that I've seen that kind of reflects those considerations.
Okay, Nick Azadian.
So thank you guys for giving this presentation. It's helpful to kind of see what you guys are planning. I do have a couple of questions. My first question is, what is your plan for stormwater management on the site? This is a very large impervious area. And currently, you know, the site is not really handling that quite well. So what is the current plan for that?
I'm sorry, I was trying to, I don't know what was chiming. We are meeting the newest flood maps with we will be dry stormproofing these two buildings. And the parking structure, first floor would be flooded. We're raising the grade of the site.
I think you're misunderstanding. Stormwater management refers to how you are containing water, typically rain, and preventing that from essentially causing issues in the sewer system.
Mhm.
And so typically the DEP would require for something like this to have quite a number of very large storm tanks to be installed, which I did not see in a lot of these plans that were put forth here.
Mhm.
You want me to speak to that, Doug?
Yeah.
Okay. Hi, Nick. So so overall, we won't be increasing the amount of impervious surfaces. In fact, we'll be decreasing it with some of the landscaping that we're adding. So that's a positive change in terms of stormwater management.
Certainly, but you'd have to submit that to the DEP for approval.
Yeah, no, we've actually, the our stormwater plans have been submitted to DEP. The stormwater management plan for this site entails a connection to this existing CSO there, meaning that the stormwater will not be flowing into the combined sewers. There will be no stormwater added to the combined sewers. So our entire stormwater volume is being diverted from the combined sewer system, and therefore will have no net impact on the.
So you're essentially using the outlet that's at the pier by the park, basically.
Right, but because it's after the stormwater regulator, Nick, it means that it's not flowing into the combined sewer.
I'm aware.
Yeah, so, great. So I mean, so I'm okay. Glad.
I got you. You basically you're not going to the sewer. You're
not going to sewer. You're not taxing.
Okay.
You're not adding that volume. It's like this functional equivalent of detaining 100% of your stormwater.
I got you. So my second question for you guys is, what is the approximate total roof area that you guys have for solar usage?
We anticipate being able to generate approximately 2 megawatts of electricity, which is just a huge amount of PV. So it's all 8 stages. It's roof of the parking structure and 5758. So it's a massive solar installation. We believe that on many days we will be generating power in excess of our requirements on site.
Okay. My last question is, as it applies to local hiring. So I think we had spoken about this last time. And do you guys have any mandates for local hiring, and how are you reaching out to the community for doing that? Now, I know you're already speaking about SBDIC and all these workforce programs. However, I would want to point out that this is a very different neighborhood than where your other studios are located, and there's a significant language barrier. So what are your efforts specific to trying to reach out to our immigrant populations in terms of jobs and attempting to help them with perhaps entry into the union?
We have a lot of Spanish speaking workforce members here, both our own forces and some of our outside contractors. In terms of the union, we can't control admission to the union. We can only work with them in a training program and hope that they take members in. In terms of construction, we do have the MWBE. I believe there's an L in there as well. And I am not sure what requirements we have for our own workforce, but I believe we agreed to try to find local people first, and we would do that whether or not that's in the EDC lease or not.
Do you want me to add anything here, Doug?
Sure.
Just, we are working, I've had a number of conversations with some of the local organizations, and we're trying to put together a larger task force through CB7, actually in partnership with Center for Family Life and some others, to really discuss potential workforce training programs. And I have mentioned a number of times asking for assistance with language barriers, because I know you did bring this up back in November. And of course, we identify that, language could be a problem. So we're just working on that, and we welcome any input on how you can sort of address the language barrier. We've spoken to a number of partners, and it's been a hurdle to many. So again, Doug put up my email address. I welcome a continued conversation on that.
Thank you.
Cindy. Cindy Van Den Bosch.
Thank you. Thanks so much for coming out and sharing this plan. I have a question. I believe on 51st and First Avenue, where you're seeking to kind of create a sort of move the entrance out there. That is the site of a Navy Armed Guard pole that was dedicated in 2006 to the veterans. It's a World War II memorial dedicated to the service members, the armed guards that were assigned to ships that went through sort of the building on that site. And I'm just wondering if you can restore and upgrade and keep it in its place, because it's meant to sort of signify, what was basically the largest armed guard center in the country. And so I'm just wondering if that is a possibility.
I believe that is an addition that was built here.
No. I think you're talking, Cindy. Hi, were you meant? I'm putting pieces together. Are you saying it's a flagpole at the end of 51st? Because I've seen it, but I didn't.
A plaque. So there's
like a little platform and like a plaque, and okay.
Yes, and so we've done oral histories with folks. I know people. I mean, it has fallen into disrepair, and I thought it was in the hands. I thought it was Department of Sanitation property. But if this becomes part of your property, number one, can we keep it where it is because it's there for a reason? And can we take care of it better than it's been taken care of since 2006?
Well, the Port Authority controls this piece, but we'll be fixing it up as part of our work and putting in the new bike/pedestrian path through here and landscaping along here. And I'd be happy to maintain that area that you're talking about. And it should be a significant improvement from the way this lot looks right now, and should be more visible. I'm all for that.
Okay, great. And I don't know if I'm happy also to share what information we have about the site, if that's helpful. But are you basically saying that, you'll talk to the Port Authority, and or I'm also happy to reach out to them, or maybe we can reach out.
I'd like to clarify whose property it actually sits on, because I just bushwhacked around there a little bit. It seems like it's outside of the Port Authority's fence line, and maybe it's maybe it is Department of Sanitation. I'm not sure. It's Doug, it's at the very end of 51st Street. You can actually kind of see it in that aerial. It's like a little flagpole there.
Whoops. I see it now right there.
Yeah,
Yes.
right there. Yeah. So I'm not sure, but let's, maybe we can be in touch and figure out whose property it is on, who's meant to be taking care of it.
It's
great.
It's a plaque and a flagpole.
It's a plaque and a flagpole, and it's a World War II memorial.
I'd be okay with if the Port Authority will be okay with it, to put it more central in this, as we improve this, to put it along the pedestrian and bike path. Because it's gonna, the garbage trucks are gonna keep parking here. We can't control that.
Yeah, I mean, I preferably, I mean, if we can keep it in its place and it can be cared for, that would be great because it's there for a reason, but we can talk about this offline, but thank you.
Okay, that might be easier because the Port Authority, they have visions of having a, rail line going through here again, but I don't think that's gonna happen, but we have to.
Okay.
Possibility.
Thank you. I'll follow up. I'll follow up offline as well. Thank you.
And we have one attendee with a hand up.
Okay, so bring her in because I don't see any. I want to give a last call for any board members or committee members or panelists who would like to comment or question. Kate, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm losing the raise hand
David.
function in the app, but hi.
Okay, sorry, Dave, go ahead, and then we'll go to Kate.
Okay, so 50th is one way uphill, right, away from the entrance. So the routing for your truck traffic, would you be, I mean, I know you don't control trucks that are inbound necessarily from a variety of companies, but generally speaking, how would you be routing your trucks? I'm again concerned with that park entrance at now between 50th and 51st, no longer at 51st. There'll need to be some treatment over the rail bed line for cyclists and pedestrians and wheelchairs, which is part of why I think it's already sort of creeping onto EDC property because it could use the existing entrance to the parking lot in the old buildings. So, but where's the, is there any accommodation signage? Are you working with DOT, EDC, just around the whole management of this very mixed group of travelers, commercial and private, into that new entrance? Like who owns that? Who owns safety at the entrance?
Part of our goal with this as our entrance or iconic entrance gate is to really make people aware of this is where people are driving onto the lot, separate and apart from what the park entrance looks like to the south of it. Right now they're essentially one and the same, and it's not
they're blended,
demarcated in any way, which I think leads to problems. So this will clearly note our entrance, and 50 to 100 feet south will be the park entrance. We understand the rail crossing, which is a constant, presently and future. But I think by having the signage like it is, it'll be a plus.
So we've also, Doug, if you do, we're working with DOT, and we have committed to doing a signal warrant study of the 50th Street intersection.
Mm-hmm.
So that will look at enhanced safety measures or signalization at that intersection. And I think we would be open to the measures that study would recommend. Of course, like the warrant study is prescriptive in terms of the kinds of measures that it allows for, but yeah, we are engaging in that process. So whether it's signage or signalization, we will update you as to the results of that study.
Okay, I appreciate the detail. Thank you. Yeah.
Also, I believe DOT or EDC or some combination are working on some plan to change the routing of traffic along those avenues to, I think, make it safer, and in terms of one ways and whatnot. I hope I'm not speaking out of school, but I think there is some master plan in the works to make it better.
Yeah, the source of my question is this. I was working on the staff that helped establish that entrance at 51st Street, and it was very hard won. In the end, it was very expensive, and it was a very bureaucratic and time-consuming process, only operating on EDC property. When you add Port Authority to the mix, there's a whole nother level of complication. So my question is Port Authority committed now as it stands for that whole scheme, or is that a prospect?
It's only a question of the details being agreed upon, but they are on board with relocating the entrance to the park and running a new pedestrian and bike path through there.
Thank you so much. And again, there's a sensitivity around that just because funding was present for that current entrance years before we were actually able to do it. And there were many, many questions about electrification, lighting. The buildings were actually used, to redirect some lighting because electrical lines were very impractical on the surface level. Anyway, just a world of, engineering complications. So I wish you good luck and Godspeed. But I'm very concerned when we get these overlapping jurisdictions between DOT, EDC, Port Authority, a private leaseholder, and a lot of things fall through the cracks. So I hope we can be in sort of like regular dialogue about the progress of that, so there's no lapse of access at that point.
I understood. Absolutely. And we are looking to put lighting all along that path.
Yeah, and I would say that EDC was very, aware of those concerns during their negotiations with us, and so we are only once we've provided and constructed and opened this alternative access are we able to close down the existing south entrance. That's spelled out in black and white in our lease agreement. So that lapse is accounted for.
That's very reassuring. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, Kate Walsh and then John Fontilla.
Yeah, so Ben, you're saying only when you have the other south entrance done are you allowed to close the existing south entrance?
Correct.
Correct.
Okay, because the proposal here is something that was long thought, long access, provides accessibility, public access, public good is being taken away. And so there needs to be a commitment that we are not going to all of a sudden have heavy construction and the impact of increase of trucks and movement happening at the same time that we haven't provided folks with access. So I didn't hear a response or comments back around this truck issue. We are a heavily burdened community with air quality, air pollution, lung disease, lung cancer. We have last mile trucking facilities. We have a rise in trucking, and I haven't heard anything responding to this challenge of having diesel engines in and out of your lot. And you've passed the buck to the studios and say it's their responsibility. Why is there not accountability and responsibility of the kinds of trucks that are coming on to Steiner Studios from Steiner Studios? And we can't
dictate that to our customers. That's our customers' choice. What you haven't asked about is automobiles, where we are planning from day one to have the capacity to have charging stations for, Ben, how many cars?
We're going to start off with at least 200, and that, with the ability to go up to the full.
Putting in electric and distribution for how many? What percent of our cars?
We're provisioning to electrify the entire parking structure, which would be it's 550 cars, as you mentioned. So that's 90%.
And it's not for us to tell our customers they have to use electric trucks. I'm not seeing a lot of electric trucks in the city, and the alternative use for the site is last mile, which is a hell of a lot more pollution and truck traffic than what this industry brings to a 16-acre site. There's no limits to what could be going in and out of that site today if those buildings were fully tenanted at 57 and 58, and the raw land could be a parking facility like I have at the end of my street. So I appreciate, nobody wants pollution, but given the alternatives, we think we have a pretty good project for it.
So I am not going to get into a straw man, in terms of this development and another and last mile, and like we're getting the best that we can. Like, I'm not going to participate in that kind of paradigm setup. What I'm confirming and hearing is that there's no impact. There's nothing that's being done related to trucking, which is my question. I'm not talking about cars. And what you guys are saying is it's the studios and it's nothing that you guys can do. And so just having that on the record, that is something that you guys have. You don't have a sense of how many trucks come on and off, but you will get back to us. And that these are diesel trucks, as far as you know, outside of, because you don't have any ability to create any sort of system to make sure that they're not diesel trucks.
Correct.
Okay, so our community is a heavily burdened community by air pollution and safety and fatalities. And I'm going just to repeat again that I don't see anything in this proposal that takes into account the additional burden that is being placed by your project. I'm not in a straw man debate about other things, about your project related to these major concerns. So you don't have the solutions right now, but I would like to be able to hear more about how you're thinking about that going forward. The second question I had is the red brick building. Is that on the national, the red brick building warehouse that would be coming down? Is that on the National Registry of Historic Places for Industrial Uses?
No.
Okay, does it have any historic value?
Perhaps.
When was it built?
I don't know when it was built.
Who is it? Who is the first tenant? What was it previously used for?
It was a warehouse.
Initial, when it was.
It was a
Yeah,
warehouse.
when it was initially built.
It was in those days a last mile distribution center, essentially.
When it was initially built, what was the shipping? Was it a shipping company that built it?
I believe it was a Bush. I think a Bush built it.
Okay, so it's part of the existing Bush terminal building.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the red brick building that's being proposed to be torn down is part of the historic fabric of the community, which is part of the Bush Terminal, which is our community is a historic, working class waterfront community. And so it could have historic value. Is that what I'm hearing?
It might. Yes, you're hearing that.
Okay, great. So yeah, it would be, that's another thing that I want to follow up on one other point. And then the last bit here is on climate change impacts. So you had a lot of questions from Nick on stormwater. It is very well known that current flooding maps are not, the New York City flooding maps continue to be updated with the extreme weather events that continue to occur. Have you guys done a site-specific climate vulnerability assessment?
I do not believe we are required to do that under DOB, and we haven't done it.
Okay, you haven't. Yeah, it's not under DOB, but you guys, Steiner Studios, have not done it. Okay.
Well, okay. Let me interject. So, as part of our EAS, we study the long-term effects of climate change on the site. That's a public policy initiative at the city level, and so we do look at long-term sea level rise, and you'll be able to look up that chapter once it's completed. And so we have pretty aggressive climate mitigation strategies. We're raising most of the site at least 2 feet above the design flood elevation, which is like 1.5 feet over the required elevation, which is currently required by DOB. As Doug and I both mentioned, we're installing almost 2 megawatts of solar PV on the roofs of these buildings, which on most days will provide more than our power requirements to power the site. And we're also taking steps within the building to locate all of our critical infrastructure above a very high level. It's about elevation 18, which is like the elevation that's considered the worst case scenario under the New York City's long-term sea level rise projections. So yeah, we have taken climate change into account in our designs. So I wanted to be more specific about that.
Thanks,
Okay,
Ben.
well-
I found that response helpful. Thank you.
I want to go to John Fontillis and then Antoinette Martinez and then John Johnson.
Hey guys, is my voice coming in? Can you hear me?
Can hear you.
Hi, thanks. I was actually delayed on the train, so I can only dial in. And you may have talked about this earlier, but will we be able to get a copy of the CDC presentation? I know it says Public Design Commission on the bottom, and I believe that hasn't been posted to the BDC website. But could the board get a copy of this drawing set?
This is mislabeled here. This presentation is for this meeting right now. And we can get you a copy of it.
Okay, I just want to check because in terms of the heights of the studio buildings, what do they top out as?
I believe it's 110 for the taller building. Let me, this is 80 feet to the top of the existing buildings, and this is 110 to the mid-rise.
And then the parking garage is a little less than 80?
The parking garage is 55 feet to the deck.
Okay. The only thing I'd just like to note, living in Sunset Park, one of the things we do prize are the upland views from the water to the top of the hill. And 48th Street, I see you've aligned the buildings to have that view corridor clear, which is great. You start on 44th, which is great. If at all possible, to make sure that those view corridors are clear, that there is nothing in there, so that when you're looking down 48th and 44th, and to some extent 50th as well, that that view can be expressed all the way from the top of the ridge all the way to the water. It'd be a great help to make sure that that sight line could be respected.
I believe we exceeded, we're not subject to certain view corridors because of the rail yard, but we are creating these. And the buildings are relatively low, given the height of Sunset Park as it climbs, and these are perpendicular to it. So I think we've done what we could to maximize seeing over the buildings.
Yes, and I agree. I'm just saying that, those pathways, alleyways in between the parking garage and the left-hand studio building onto left, if you could, if they could be streetscaped and developed so that that view corridor could be maintained, that would be a great help. And then lastly, in terms of and you may have talked about this, but what is the separation between your truck marshaling area and the rail yard? Is that continuous, or is there a fence line? Is there
there's a big change in grade because we're building up our site. So there's a retaining wall and a screen wall. And that retaining wall ranges, I think, Ben, you were saying 2 to 6 feet. Would that be accurate?
Yeah.
And then the screen wall is above that. And we're also going to have guardrails because I am extra cautious.
All right, and that's driven entirely, by resiliency concerns, right? Because the existing elevation of the site is way down in the floodplain. And so
understood?
That's a key element of what we're doing there.
Is there any way, shape, or form for that wall to be battered or have some sort of landscaping on it, so that we aren't looking across a 200-foot area? I mean, it is a 200-foot area now, but could we improve it in some way, whether it's ivy growing on the wall or some type of landscaping at the top of the wall? It's
a landscaped screen wall above that, and the screen wall itself is it's like a fake stone wall, so that's not a mere concrete wall.
If you have any, as you develop those details, I'm sure you're still in process. Would love to be able to review that. Okay.
Okay.
Got it. Yep. So you do have a slight bit of battering at the bottom.
Yeah.
And is that true? You do have about a 6-foot planting strip on the low side? Oh, that's at the park.
It depends where it is.
It varies, yeah.
Okay, anything that could soften the edge so that we don't get this, a plinth that separates you from the rest. I mean, again, design details, I know you're in process, but the upland view is very important. Being able to soften the edges are very important. I mean, it is a park on the other side. Being able to express that would be great.
Yeah, no, I think there will be a stark and positive contrast between our site and the rail yard between us and First Avenue.
Danny, that's all I have. Thank you.
Antoinette, then John Johnston, and then Sammy Sierra.
Hi. So this board has really struggled to attain reliable upfront data on local job hiring and statistics. Can Steiner commit to work to collect this type of data and make it publicly available, along with information on any training programs, just so there's a level of transparency and accountability moving forward?
I'm not sure exactly what you're saying on the ask. I know it's illegal for us to ask people their ethnicity or anything like that for any kind of polling.
Right. So we're not asking for ethnicity data, but if we can have information broken down by zip code of where people live, just so that we're able to account for local hiring at the facility.
Debbie, do you want to speak to that?
We could, just collect the data once we've hired folks. And see where they're coming from.
No. What we could do is that we have our Hire NYC commitments, right? And those apply to all of our major trades, right? So all of our major subcontractors will have Hire NYC commitments, meaning that all new hires, we will have to go through the EDC/SBS process to staff the subcontractors will have to go through that process to staff the job. So they will be working with Workforce One and the city to vet those candidates. And I believe that program can help to produce the kind of reports that you're looking for.
Right. And we've struggled to attain reliable information from those programs. So that's why I was asking if Steiner would be able to commit to collecting that information and making it publicly available. And if that means working in conjunction with those workforce subcontractors, but we've really struggled to make sure that, the folks that are being employed are being hired locally. Like, we don't have a reliable way of getting that information. And tracking it moving forward, right? Like, if people are leaving, it's one thing to provide the numbers up front, but also being able to have that information yearly.
Who's talking? Is that Antoinette? Is that you? I just want to follow up on Antoinette, if you don't mind. I want to add to your question. So how do you keep track now, Deborah, Doug, and Ben? I mean, something like a zip code is easy enough to keep. Do you go over the 1099s if they're independent contractors, or the 1040s if they're employees?
Our CMs, Steiner and its direct CMs don't have huge payrolls, right? The payrolls are of the subcontractors during construction. Are you asking about construction, or like?
First of all, what's a CM?
Oh, construction manager. Sorry. Are you asking about is this a question about when we're hiring?
Here's a question. The question is asked, and Antoinette can ask her own questions, but I interpret it as this.
I think I think in general, I think we want to know a breakdown of who's working there, whether it's in construction or later on, if and when these studios developed.
We can't get any data from our clients as to their staffing within a production. What we contract with directly is security, housekeeping, landscaping, snow removal, and our own forces and lighting and grip. We do not control the union, membership and people showing up to work on the TV series, films, whatever.
So then how
so-
does Steiner plan to commit to hiring locally?
We can only commit to our own hiring. We can't commit for our clients.
We have the goal and the intention of our workforce programs are to work with the community to create a pipeline of talent into the studios, right? Part of the commitment that we have made is to, work with local schools, work with local development corporations like an SBIDC and others to, foster interest in working at Steiner and developing the skills to do so. So that is our goal. And we're going to be working over the next couple of years as we're developing this site to effectuate that.
Right.
At
And
that
we
time,
appreciate the goal, but we would also like to see hard numbers.
so, I mean, I don't, it's based on just some of the reality, based on having to track some zip codes from construction from a different project we've done, it can be really hard to do. So it's hard to make promises because sometimes it's hard to do. But I mean, Doug, I don't want to speak, this question is, we haven't conferred with everyone and have back end in place to be able to do that. But I think the goal is definitely to hire locally and to be able to track that as much as we are able.
I think you can check our bona fides from the Wegmans that we opened in the Navy Yard. We are not Wegmans, but Wegmans hired first and foremost from the surrounding public housing projects around us, and through the Navy Yard Workforce Center. And I believe they hired 250 people from the immediately surrounding area.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know on the updates from time to time, but it was a remarkable job. And they're considered one of the great companies in America to work for. So we were very and we will do whatever we've committed to do and try to be as transparent as we can. But we don't want to promise you something if we can't be sure of delivering it.
What we're proposing to do is try to replicate what we've done at the Brooklyn Navy Yard, is what Doug is mentioning, right? And
yeah, and my concern with that is that I've heard that they're actually, and I hear what's happening with Wegmans. I guess my follow-up question to Wegmans is, did Steiner Studios play a leg in that in any way to help companies hire locally? Because I'm hearing, I understand that your goal is to hire locally and that's the intention, but it doesn't sound like you have a way to effectively track that information. And I think that's what we need, because it's one thing to say something and it's another way for us to actually see concretely if it's happening.
We did it at the Navy Yard with Wegmans and their cooperation. That's a long-term lease situation where they have a stable workforce. The production world is a film by film hiring basis. Everybody is freelance in that business, whether it's TV, film, commercials, whatever. What we do here in the Navy Yard is we work through the Brooklyn Navy Yard hiring office, and that they ran point on that hiring process for Wegmans and then would submit applicants to Wegmans. We don't have that same leeway with this industry here as we had with Wegmans in the Navy Yard.
For the permanent jobs, especially because this is a kind of very specific industry with unionized, as Doug mentioned. So we have very little reach into the workforce of our clients who all are within these theatrical and production unions. And we as as the developers and operators of the facility, we don't have a direct connection, like a direct influence over those unionized trades. But where we do have influence is over construction hiring. And what we've done successfully on every single one of our jobs over the past 15 years at the Navy Yard is worked with the Navy Yard's hiring center to do really aggressive outreach to the local workforce. And you can, as Doug mentioned, you can check on that because we've done it very successfully. We run each one of our jobs, we run multiple hiring fairs where we bring all of our contractors in and allow them to meet a pool of workforce. We continuously follow up with, our partners, whether it's Workforce One or the Navy Yard. And in this case, we are relying heavily on Hire NYC, Workforce One to be our partners in that. So I think if you're not getting the information that you need, we can follow up with them to see what kind of,
well, they wouldn't collect information on freelance, right? So you're saying that information.
No, I'm saying construction, because what I was focusing on was construction, where that's where we can have more of an impact. Because
so what I'm hearing is there's no commitment to work with even the freelance. I'm sorry, I'm not too familiar with all of the different types of lingo for the different jobs, but for the companies that'll be occupying space at Steiner, there's no, not that there's no way, but there's no commitment to for a way to collect that data.
No, they will. We can't get that. We can't tell Disney to give us the zip codes for everyone who touches their show, whether they're a day player for one day or anything else. They don't do that. The unions are the ones supplying the workforces. They're not controlling who comes to the site so much as the unions are for the bulk of the jobs, but for the high-priced talent.
Okay, and even for the Brooklyn Navy Yard, there's no way to know how many folks were employed there locally for any of the studio work. Correct. There's no way for this data to manifest. Correct. That's interesting. Thank you. Oh, Dan, I actually had two quick questions. These are specific to EDC. I was wondering if there would be any discussion on redevelopment of Pier 6. And also if there would be any discussion about leases for the roundhouse and the powerhouse.
Those are the powerhouse and the roundhouse on the Made in New York North Campus. We're going to have to ask EDC those questions. I think. I don't think Steiner's going to be helpful. But we can set up a meeting and we can ask those questions directly too, in a letter form, and then ask for a meeting with EDC.
Okay, thank you.
So if you can actually, those two questions for EDC, just email them to Jeremy, copy the Cesar and myself, and maybe we can get a question out to EDC and then ask for a meeting. Okay, Sam Sierra, Nick, and Pat Ruiz.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for your presentation. I have two quick items. The first one pertains to the issue of the view corridor that was spoken of earlier. I just wanted to be a little more specific as to what view, so this way Steiner Studios can do the research and keep the view in consideration. So just to share with you that at the top of the hill at the cemetery, which is, by the way, the highest natural point in Brooklyn, there's a statue up there by the name of Minerva. That statue, Minerva, is waving at the Statue of Liberty. So I just wanted to be a little specific, and so this way you would take into consideration the view corridor that we were speaking of. The second item is that we have a committee. This is with the issue of the trucking. We have a committee on last mile trucking, and I just wanted to extend perhaps an invitation to Steiner Studios to perhaps participate in these discussions when we meet monthly or periodically when we meet, with the idea that perhaps down the line, understanding a little more what the concerns are to our communities, there may be a way that Steiner Studios can help lead the trucking in a new direction. So we would like to extend an invitation. And thank you again.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sammy. Nick, back to you, and then Pat Ruiz.
I have two follow-up questions. My first question is of the 2,200 permanent jobs that you've quoted, how many of those are directly hired by Steiner versus how many of those are believed to be subcontractor?
I have to rephrase the question.
Roughly.
I have to rephrase the question. The 2,200 subcontract, the bulk of the 2,200 are our clients. So I would say it's probably on the order of 200 between our own staff and our direct contractors.
I got you. So basically the 200, so most of it would be, and of that, what it would be approximately like unionized. I imagine probably not your workforce, but like a lot of the stagehands and everything else like that would be really working as subcontractors to the folks that might be doing a show, or I guess explain it to me because I don't know the business.
Every production is a special purpose entity just for that TV series or that film. They hire a workforce, they're hiring union members, and they're hired for that season. They could be let go, but they're hired for that season of a series. Maybe they get hired again for the second season, maybe not. Somebody else comes in, but they're hired by the production. And there are a lot of different kinds of producers. The producers we deal with are the ones who physically get the project made. They're not the marketers. They're not the cobbling together the packages. They are the ones who make it happen. They are the ones who are hiring, or making deals with the unions to bring on that workforce.
I got you. So essentially then, for those 200 staff that you would have direct control over, you would have some influence as to where you potentially could find those future jobs from. And so could we get a commitment where those 200 positions or so be prioritized to Sunset Park because you do have direct control over that, versus the other 2,000 where I understand there's a number of entities thick where you cannot directly influence that?
Some of my existing team will work there. So I can't say 200, but I'm happy to try to bring as many of the new jobs to local residents for whoever our direct contractors are, to the extent those contractors are full-time here. If it's a landscaping contractor, they're not here full-time. I don't have that kind of leverage. But if it's our housekeeping or our guard services, yes.
Okay. I would also suggest perhaps not using the hotel analogy, primarily because along 39th Street, a lot of hotel owners use that same argument. And if you're unfamiliar, there were a number of prostitution busts for that particular thing. So while you may want to say that you are a hotel, being the operator of one and still having either behaviors or conditions that are not really conducive to, being a good neighbor does not necessarily directly alleviate you from the actions of those particular contractors, whether it's a requirement or not. And we would encourage you to try to, get your contractors and anybody else who might be using the spaces to look to the future and look to the broader neighborhood when they are conducting business. Now, we understand you can't control them, but we would suggest and strongly appreciate if you were to suggest to them some alternate means of conducting business where possible.
You're talking about our film and TV clients?
Yes.
I wish I had any kind of pull like you suggest.
I'm not saying you have pull. I'm saying that, you can always recommend or request, and they can always tell you no. But it's better than basically outright saying no.
But they're hiring from the union. The union decides who goes in large.
I'm not saying necessarily to the union, but it could be how they operate, on your site and et cetera.
I think you'll find if you talk to our neighbors, we're a pretty good neighbor. Talk to our neighbors in the yard and outside the yard. I think that's your best indication of how we will behave in the future.
An extension of that could be trucking as well. It's all things that you can request. I guess what I'm getting at is that we've moved past the fact because you can't dictate how these people are going to operate. So all we're saying is that you can make the request and the suggestion.
Yeah, Doug, so if I could follow up with that. We know you're a good neighbor. We know your reputation, but we're never, you know, the goalposts are always moving for progress. So, and we want, you know, we're a good community board, but we're not, you know, we're not finished yet. So we're always going to try to be better, and because we have to be, because we still a lot of work to do, or we could all retire. So that's what Nick and that's what I'm talking about, kind of lending your voice. I know you don't have leverage with these guys, but your voice, your name is a big name, Steiner. So lending your voice, because you're going to be a neighbor of ours. You're all going to be our neighbor.
We will do whatever we can to help Sunset Park, besides build our project, in terms of staffing it, operating it, how we support the neighborhood in all ways. And I am always open to that, and I can always do better and want to do better. So I'm fine with that.
Thanks, Pat. And then we're going to go to the attendees. Go ahead,
Hi,
Pat.
that's okay. As someone who used to work at a company, and I won't say who, at Industry City, I know that they were reluctant to share information as far as how many folks come from Sunset Park. So might I ask or suggest that when you know who is hiring, a heads up to CB7, what sites they're using, whether it's Workforce One or et cetera, and we can get the word out that they are hiring at XYZ located at so-and-so. I mean, I know we're making it difficult, and it's something that we want to know who's being hired within the Community Board 7 district. But if there's any way that you can give us a heads up and give us the links, and we can get that information out to the residents. I mean, if that's something that you can do, it would be really appreciated.
I think things move very fast. So I think our best effort can be through having these lines of communication with SBIDC and the schools and these other things, so that we have in hand people to contact to say, talk to these people. You know, we can tell our vendors and our contractors, talk to these people, and Debbie is there, you know, putting them together, not just telling them, but putting them together. And I think that's what we can do. I can't tell you before we start with them, we should get, you know, have a runway for getting a list together. It's really got to be more fluid than that. But Debbie, part of Debbie's job is to make sure that we are using the resources that we put together by having those lines of communication and trying to bring that workforce here.
And I appreciate that. And I'm sorry that, you know, it sounds like we're beating up on you, but, you know, it's really important that we make sure, just like when Lutheran Medical Center was Lutheran Medical Center, they hired within the community. And it was a really great opportunity for folks and to be able to walk to work. And we would like to continue that with any future companies that come into the Sunset Park or CB7 district. So thank you.
It's good for the contractors too, because they're more likely, it's easier to show up and snow, whatever. It's better. So I'm with you, and it makes us a better neighbor and them a good neighbor. So I'm all
right. Thank you, Mr. Stein.
Mr. Stein is my father. He's on the end of this month.
Thank you, Doug.
Thank you, Miss Ruiz. Ms. Ruiz. So Jeremy, who's from the gallery, wants his question?
We have Summer Sandoval from Uprose. Summer, you could unmute yourself now.
Thanks, Jimmy. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Okay, so I put most of my questions in the chat. I didn't know if you all would get to it. My first questions are about on-site energy. And so you mentioned that there was going to be a substation. I want to confirm that this substation is a new substation that you all are planning on building?
Yes.
Okay, and then as part of this substation, is there going to include any type of battery storage, energy storage of any sort?
No.
Okay, which kind of, brings up a few concerns, particularly around the on-site solar that you're having. Is any of the on-site solar that is planned on the buildings going to be community solar?
Whatever we don't use, we are selling back to the utility company. So it's going into the grid.
I understand, but then you're receiving that value of solar per kilowatt hour put back in the grid. I'm asking if there's any plans and any, and if not currently, then is there the possibility to have at least a portion of the 2 megawatts of solar that's planned to be on several rooftops to be allocated to community solar?
Our math is we have to get paid back for putting that in. And that is how we are able to afford doing it, is to sell our surplus there or to save on our own electric bills.
Summer, can you define community solar?
Community solar, that's a really good question. Yes, community solar is when there is one large solar project or solar array, usually on a large rooftop, where that energy is being put back into the electrical grid, and the utility in this example would be Con Edison, is providing a price for that. So they're providing X amount of cents per kilowatt hour produced by that solar array. For example, the Sunset Park Solar, the community solar project that Uprose is building on the Brooklyn Army Terminal, we are passing on all of those savings as monthly discounts to subscribers. And this is one of the multiple ways this project is building community wealth. And so that's why I'm asking, since 2 megawatts of solar is quite a large amount of energy for comparison's sake, or a project on the Brooklyn Army Terminal is a little shy of 1 megawatt. So this is more than double that size of solar, which will be producing a lot of revenue from being added to the electrical grid. And so my questions around around energy is, one, there's mention that production activities will happen particularly in the morning and the night. So in order to not put excess stress on the electrical grid, I have my questions around battery storage to help even out that demand curve. So not to put extra strain on the electrical grid, which would then in turn put excess strain on the fossil fuel power plants that turn on when the demand is high. And so which is also connected to many of the air pollution concerns voiced earlier tonight.
I don't think I didn't make myself clear enough. I think we essentially light Yankee Stadium on a completely unpredictable schedule. Not mornings, not nights, just wildly unpredictable. Based on shooting schedules that are developed the night or 2 nights before. It's weather dependent, it's dependent on talent, it's dependent on a host of factors besides what the scene has to be. And if they run late one day, union turnaround times, when they show up the next day and they run a little late the next day and things like that. So there is normally a factory can have good power saving by, they run a process, they bake cookies all day, and they know what their demand is going to be at a steady level. We are a completely unpredictable, spiky business, and we can't change that. We will spend a small fortune putting in that solar array, and we need to recoup that money, and we expect to get the savings ourselves as part of our project. I can't make the math work otherwise.
You going to turn a profit?
I hope to turn a profit, but
Well,
it's not going to be from the electorate.
Right. So my question is it because of your crazy schedule of lighting Yankee Stadium, at all times of the day, is that why you need the power station instead of just having the solar electric plus whatever else is available on the grid? The normal-
There's a weather function too. But we could do a green roof or we could do solar. We would do one or the other. And we'd rather do solar because we think it does more for the project and for everything. And we'll get a payback on it, but it's not immediate and it's not.
Summer, I'd like, sorry to interrupt, Doug, but Summer, I'd like to get a presentation from Uprose about the community solar and whatever else you're working on down there, because we'd like to know about it. Sounds
Yeah.
very interesting. If it's a public benefit, it could be helpful to get a clinic on it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, especially because, we've not only locally, but played a big role on the state level to really build up a very robust solar market. A lot of the incentives you're seeing and the policies that help, make the solar market better in New York City, New York State has, or influence all over that. So it is disappointing to hear that there's not even a small portion of the, 2 megawatts of energy that's allocated for community solar of any form for the project. And I also want to confirm from your presentation, you said that all but one of the buildings will have solar and the one that doesn't have solar will have a green roof, but then you just said we're doing solar or green roof. So I just want to confirm the actual plan and proposal on the table here.
Now, a portion of one building, probably about 10,000 feet of that roof will be a park-like roof, not a sedum roof. It's just a park-like roof for people to hang out at and have as a, on-site clientele rooftop view and greenery.
And will that green roof be open to the public in any form?
Our site cannot be open to the public because of the nature of the business. The same way you can't go on any lot in LA if you're not on the drive-on list or the call list, or you're a regular employee there with an access card. You can't go onto a film lot or a TV lot. It's just not done because of the intellectual property rights at stake and safety.
Doug, you might want to mention the 4 acres of parkland that you are improving, however.
No,
we're doing a lot of work at Bush Terminal Piers Park. Yeah, there's certainly not chump change.
Yeah, we were part of getting that park created. Do you have an estimated peak demand estimate for the energy of all your facilities, i.e., if there was production going on and everything possible was turned on, what does that peak demand of energy look like?
I couldn't tell you.
Okay, and the last comment I want to make is that there was conversation about what flood maps to use, what to prepare for storm surge and sea level rise, and I just want to make the comment that Hurricane Ida that we just saw 2 weeks ago was considered a 100-year storm. Thank you.
Thank you, Summer. Nick, you're back on.
Just wanted to give a couple clarifying statements. So when the term peak load is utilized, it is not every single item being turned on at the same time. It's the coincident maximum load from a property, which is not the total connected load. Secondly, the 2.8 megawatts that you're talking about generating likely is probably in excess of what you guys are hopefully going to use. And Con Ed will not buy back the power typically from you, but they'll issue you credits, usually in some kind of net metering strategy. I would doubt that there would be extra power being produced just based on the nature of the building being discussed. And it's very likely that they will need every last ounce of electricity that they're making. The reason probably for the substation is because you have to run the loads in the evening when the solar is obviously not working. And so Con Ed would obviously have to provide infrastructure which could support the larger load, the 2.8 megs or whatever else you guys might need to support that. Finally, If you are operating in the evening, that is typically not when the grid is strained. So that would not impact the peaker plants that would be discussed. And it would really be an issue if you're talking about August or September operation. Usually midday is typically when Con Ed has to turn those on, at which time, most of the time, it's sunny. And if it wasn't sunny, then you wouldn't typically be at peak and you would not be impacting those particular plants. And that's all I have to say.
Well said. Typical Nickazadian. I gotta scratch my head. Thanks, Nick. And so that's it for now. I hope you've taken some.
Yeah, there are quite a number of questions in the Q&A. Many were from Summer and from folks who have spoken, but if there are a couple here that I can read, if you don't mind.
Well, Summer's got some, and then Vanessa's got some. You want to take Vanessa's? That's the ones I see.
Vanessa, you can speak now if you wish. You could unmute yourself.
Hi, how are you? I just, I wrote down some of my questions. I'm gonna have to look at the Q&A to see what they were. I was asking them as you guys were talking. I just want to say a statement briefly. It seems that Steiner Studios is just not ready for all the questions that the community does have involvement with regards to how do we benefit from this. Steiner Studios is an amazing studio. They do make a lot of projects, but at the same time, we are looking to see, as a community, we are offering you waterfront property. The park is already there. The community made that happen. And we're looking to see what do we get out of it, because how is this going to be different from, let's say, the project that Industry City wanted to do, where the residents of Sunset Park do not benefit from it. One of my concerns is the sanitation depot. If anybody's been around there in the summertime, it does create a foul smell. How are they, if they're going to create a park or a walkway through there, what are they going to do to prevent that? Also, I forgot who it was, but the red building is a structure that's been there for a very long time. Is there any way that we can keep it? I'm sorry, I'm just going to go down my questions and hopefully you can answer them as I say them. Also, I entered the meeting a little late, but I wanted to know, how did Steiner Studios obtain this location? And is it a lease or do they own the area? Was this project approved with community insight or without? I'm sorry, I have a lot of questions. It's just I was writing them down as talking was going on, because I'm just concerned that there's just not much for the community to benefit from this project other than saying that we have Steiner Studios in our backyard. And my last question is, would Steiner Studios be committed to creating a free program that includes children of the community? This could be a summer program or a school program that introduces children of the community to the arts and different jobs that are available within the industry. Thank you for your time.
You're welcome. Let's go with that last question, Doug. Because
Debbie, do you want to speak to the education component?
Yeah. I just want to say, just to back up a bit, I think part of our conversation earlier got a little bit away from us as far as, you know, not knowing, there's a lot of components to workforce here. There's a lot of what we do has often focused on our construction jobs and our commitment to MWBE businesses there and to local hiring there, and the sort of processes by which all these third party, you know, like our construction managers then have subcontractors and all these people, and it can get hard to sort of track, and we do the best we can to track the hiring there, and we will do so to meet our goals from that perspective. But what we sort of got away from, and I think got sort of conflated in our conversation earlier, was the workforce training that we are in the process of developing. We are a ways out from actually having studios here. So in many of the conversations I've had with different community groups, groups like Center for Family Life. I have spoken to Uprose initially. I've spoken to a lot of the local organizations, and I want to continue to have these conversations. And actually through CB7, Julio is trying to help put together a task force to talk about potential workforce training programs that the community would like to see. We had an initial idea of doing a CTE school in the local high school. Then there was a little bit of pushback there that maybe that's not the best thing for the local kids. Maybe that's not what the community wants. So we'd like to hear from everyone here to have like a full conversation on what kind of programming is best. So whether it be to have a program for young children, I think we could certainly look to that. Whether it be career and technical education in the high schools to prepare folks for jobs at Steiner Studios or other studios similar, right? Just to prepare students to go off and have good careers and good jobs, utilizing the stages across the street, perhaps as training grounds, and then they can get employed, anywhere with these really good paying jobs. Or is it bridge programming, or is it working closer with BWI, which we are definitely doing, Brooklyn Workforce and Innovations, and Aaron Schiffman. We have an annual commitment to him as part to that program as part of our RFP to do a production PA program, truly preparing a workforce being plucked right from outside of the studios locally. So we are trying to plan lots of different types of training, and we're looking to figure out how best to do that and how to be efficient with that and how to meet the community needs there. So I really, truly invite you guys to email me, because we're trying to put these sort of task force together to address a number of things that we could be doing from, in that regard. So I just want to bring it back.
Okay, Deborah, I'm sorry, Deborah. What
Yeah.
I'd like to get again is your email. Is that you community input at Steiner Studios?
Yep,
That's
and
a
that goes
community-
just directly into my email.
So let's post that and put it in the Q&A or comment board, like whatever we got there, so that we have it on record.
Right. And as Doug sort of started with, and then we went more into the design of the project, just because that's sort of the stage we're at right now. We're looking to get approval from the design commission for the design of this actual, the structure of this project. In the beginning, we sort of did a summary of all of the community benefits that we did speak to at our first meeting, and we could speak to again, but the space for, gendering, for promoting gender inclusivity in film, and our hiring, our MWB Eagles, our work, throughout, so we're happy to go more into those community benefits, but those are commitments we did make as part of the RFP, and we continue to make, just because we do see ourselves as coming into this community and, hoping to be a partner, again, as a training, as a place to hire some folks, but also to be able to, leverage our space to help educate and train folks to go have just good jobs throughout New York City.
Dan, you're on mute.
Thank you, Deborah. Antoinette, please.
So just for clarity, this task force, is this separate from the Sunset Park task force that's
Yes.
organized by EDC?
Yes, no, this is something I'm trying to put together and have had a hard time getting sort of input. Perhaps it was because of the summer, and a couple of community folks have agreed to help me kind of put together stakeholders from the community to sit and talk about this. I want to make myself available.
So there's a level of transparency, and to make sure that you're working with as many community actors as possible. It might be a good idea to maybe work with the task force that's already established by EDC I'm just getting a little, I would just be concerned that there's so many different task force involved and the level of transparency around meetings happening in private. You know, if you're having meetings, will minutes be collected? Currently, there was a really big push to make sure that meetings that were organized by EDC with the Sunset Park Task Force are happening in a more transparent way with community members. So I think it would be, you know, a really great move if those meetings could be folded under that umbrella.
Okay, that's fine too. I'm happy to do that. We haven't had any of these task force meetings. I spoke with Julio from the community board about this over the summer, and sort of and some folks from Center for Family Life were going to kind of help me put together. I'm happy to go through the Sunset Park Task Force. I'm happy to just put together any group of stakeholders that wants to be giving input on the development of potential programs that we can do, because like I said, we had this idea of doing a CTE high school, and we could do that, but if that's not wanted or needed by the community, we wanted to divert that effort into something else.
And just another question, just for clarity, before, you know, we really didn't have access to speak with Steiner Studios and have a presentation from you all. So is there, and now it seems as though we'll be able to have direct communication. What role will you have with the EDC? And Deborah, are you hired by Steiner, or are you working for EDC?
I work for Steiner. I'm
Okay.
part of the Steiner team. We developed these ideas as part of our RFP, and the idea of these community benefits as part of the RFP submission that was put out by EDC to seek an operator for film studios in Bush Terminal Pierce Park, or Bush Terminal.
Okay.
So we helped craft some potential ideas to engage the community and have community benefits. And that's what we're acting upon.
And are you currently still meeting with EDC in any capacity? I'm just trying to better understand the relationship.
We're part of the EDC project. Like EDC is managing their entire mini South campus, and we are a piece of that. So we are, I mean, if anyone else wants to speak to it, but we're, you know, we have a lease with EDC for the space.
Okay, and are you still working with the community liaisons from EDC?
I'm not sure. I mean,
because
we confer with that. I'm not sure what you mean.
Yeah, so like I said before, whenever we had these meetings, we had community liaisons that would present to the board from EDC about the Made in New York campus, and they would touch base on the proposed project. And now that we're meeting with you all, I just want to understand if, you know, is there like a cord cut? Will we receive more updates from you in the future about the project, or are you still meeting with community liaisons with EDC? I'm sorry, from EDC.
Well, I mean, we're here to answer your questions and to present our project. It is in coordination and conjunction with EDC. It's you know, it's Steiner Studios. It's Doug Steiner's project, but EDC is a part of it. And like, for instance, I've spoken at the Sunset Park Task Force meetings as a representative from Steiner Studios, you know, to present on the project. It's ultimately EDC's project, the entire campus.
Perhaps you're asking, do we have a direct line of communication with them now? Yes, we do, since they got the RFP.
Okay, so because they have the RFP, now we're able to communicate with them directly.
Right, we weren't when they were a bidder and everybody else was a bidder for that RFP. We weren't allowed to know who bid on it.
Okay, And then Deborah, you'll be able to find out if you'll be able to move these conversations to the Sunset Park Task Force. That way conversations aren't happening siloed.
Correct.
Okay.
I wouldn't want to limit it to the Sunset Park Task Force because I'm not really sure that all the educational stakeholders are a part of that. But
Yeah, that's good. That's a good point, Deborah. But are you on the task force right now?
no, but we are always invited to speak to provide updates.
Okay. Yeah, so it's always, look, the more the merrier on the task force, as far as I'm concerned. So, make yourself available to the task force, and because you've got such a large footprint, and because we have very ambitious plans for the Bush Terminal Pier Park, I think you guys would be an anchor member of the reformed Sunset Park Task Force. Would be a good idea. It would add to the level of communication, an open level of communication. So I want to leave it at that. Unless there are any more pressing questions from board members or the assembled, I want to leave with that. Deborah, your email again. I think did you put it in the Q&A? And for the record, it's Sunset Park Community Import, all spelled out, at Steiner Studios. Is that what I saw?
Input, yeah.
Doug, you have a screen with Deborah's email. Would you just post that again?
Yeah, I'm trying to get that. Hang on one sec. Okay.
And Deborah, am I correct? You're seeking a vote of support for the Public Design Commission?
We are. The next step in this process is to go to the PDC with this design and move forward from there.
Okay.
Can you see my screen now? Did that work?
Yes.
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay.
Thank you guys. I'm going to end that then. I wasn't aware that you guys wanted a letter of support, a resolution of support. I would ask committee members and all board members to join in the discussion. You guys are done for all intents and purposes. If you want to hang around, that's fine. We're going to just talk about a resolution to support, or not having a resolution to support, whatever the committee decides.
I'll mute. I'm just glad to stop my video. So
okay, thanks. Committee members and board members, discussion on this.
So just to clarify the question at hand, the question is whether or not this committee resolves one way or another and transmits that to the general board. Is this a matter for the full CV7 to vote on, or is it just this committee, or
It's always for the board to vote on. The committee doesn't have any power on its own.
To clarify, it's about the design, not the use.
Yes, exactly. So I want the letter of support is for the design. There's a lot. This is a free-ranging conversation about a lot of stuff. So I want to keep any resolution that we do send to PDC, if we send to PDC, because we don't have to send anything. If we send to the Public Design Commission a letter in a resolution supporting their plans, we should have, again, the conditions that were expressed here tonight, the concerned conditions. I don't know if that's, we can always put in stuff about workforce development and local workforce development, to Antoinette's point, although that's not really part of what the PDC isn't going to care, but we can put it in. But I'd like to keep it to a lot of Nick's points about the building and John's points, and I'd like, that's why I'd like to hear anything from you guys, starting with Cindy Van den Bosch.
Yeah, I just want to clarify that I know David just asked to clarify the scope, but this basically includes all the physical
Yes.
plans for the entire property, which only includes the site that Steiner's leasing, although does it also include like the Port Authority? It doesn't include the Port Authority site. It's just
only the sites that they're going to control and they are going to set up.
Okay.
Mostly the footprint. Now, we should put in there that discussion about where the entrance to Steiner Studios is vis-a-vis the south entrance to the park. There are a lot of points brought up about separating the traffic from that and not having even a small amount of time when there is no access, other than capital reconstructions or stuff like that. But they shouldn't close it for 6 months to build the Steiner component while there is no public access or egress from that south end. That's the kind of stuff that should be put into a resolution to support.
okay. And about the like memorial, I'm not sure that's on that site, but if it is, can we make sure that that's?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. In bold, we should put that in the resolution. And thank you, by the way, Cindy, for actually, sticking up for that. I am a lifelong Sunset Parker and I didn't know about that spot. So thank you for that. And, we should steward that. We should take care of that. So with elements like that in the resolution, is there any issues? And also Catherine Walsh's concerns about truck emissions and pedestrian safety should also be in there. So with those things, I don't see any reason to write a resolution to not support it. But we do have concerns with the following, with the following concerns about the design. Instead of having a binary up and down.
Yeah.
Sorry, Dave. Go.
No, it's okay. Something I didn't bring up is, there is a pedestrian sidewalk on First Avenue for most of the length from the 43rd Street entrance to 43rd, 44th Street entrance to Bush Terminal Park all the way to 51st Street. And it is in wretched condition because most of the time it's just a truck parking zone and a dumping place and things like that. There are tree pits. There are all kinds of things. So I point up again that, a lot of stuff just falls through the cracks when it's DOT, EDC, private tenant. It just, we end up getting the short end of the stick very often on things that are pretty basic that some of the agencies should just be doing anyway, absent a wonderful new, business prospect on the waterfront. So I'm just concerned about the full pedestrian infrastructure and safety treatment of that First Avenue corridor, even if it becomes a one-way pair or they do remove some derelict rail lines. Now that's a little out of scope, and a lot of times what EDC will do is say, oh, that's outside of our property line. But then DOT has its hand involved in, changing a curb cut to get over the rail line to get the 51st Street entrance to the park. So I don't know if there's a way with many, many fewer words than I just used to express in a letter of support, and I support Steiner wholly, that, we want the agencies and the EDC in particular to step up with their new tenant and just do it right. For once, and do it right and do it complete and do it all at once. Because otherwise we're left with what the bitter taste in my mouth is the 4-year battle to get the 51st Street entrance long after funding had been allocated, and how it came down to inches of passageway access. And, it was really, really a painful experience for something that seemed like just give us an entrance to a park. And I think the design, commission, we don't want to tell them our tale of woe because it's not really their consideration. Like you said, they're not going to be concerned about certain things, but I think we can state the case that this is lacking, whether it's city planning or design commission, private entity or EDC, we get shortchanged very, very often. And it's not a wholehearted, full team approach to make 60th Street and 3rd Avenue right, or, you know, make the 51st Street entrance and everything from there to 43rd just right. It's just, I don't know how to get at that. So thank you for indulging my venting on this, but it's based on some pretty bad experiences over the last 5 years, even from actors and agencies and corporate entities that had relatively good intentions, right? It's the coordination that falls flat.
So it's pertinent to this resolution because it's the physical footprint of the space, including the public, including any access from that sidewalk on First Avenue all the way to the park.
Right.
This is, you know, the whole idea is to increase the use of people walking in this campus, either to work or to recreation or something like that. So addressing.
I think it's certainly worth a mention in a resolution, but I think it also falls outside of what Steiner's doing.
Yeah.
So I will pledge that I will hound EDC until this is done.
Well, we've got a lot of stuff with the EDC, and we can prioritize not only in terms of importance, but in terms of geography, so that if there's an overlap with the First and Second Avenue plans for the one-way plans, which Doug was talking about making safer, but we have an opposite point of view about how safe that's going to make First Avenue if we turn into one-way truck routes. But so a lot of this stuff does overlap. David, you know this as well from working at several angles within the community. Overlap with EDC and to other agencies such as parks. But I want to stick to that, but alluding to the holistic nature of this site in terms of a recreation location, an employment location, and just a place where people are walking through all the time. So I'm looking for a resolution. I'm looking for a vote on a recommendation to the full board to support the PDC plan with the conditions stated by Nick, Catherine, Antoinette, and Dave, and we can tweak those and specify those as necessary in the resolution.
So moved.
Any other discussion? Cindy, anyone else?
And Cindy.
Okay, you're moving it as well. All right. So everyone who is
just for clarification, what does this resolution do? Who would it be sent to, and why it's needed?
I don't think I don't think that. So in terms of resolutions from community boards, there's very little that's absolutely necessary in terms of outside of land use. But there probably is a feather in their cap if they go to the PDC and say, we spoke to the community board about this. I mean, we could send a letter. We can send a letter that just says to the PDC, Steiner Studios came and presented to us on this date. You know, the meeting started at 6 p.m. and ended at 8:15. That's all we have to say. We can just say that.
I mean, my concern would be to give them a feather that they can wear on their cap when a lot of questions were raised that weren't really answered, favorably for the community. I think that I personally feel like there was a lot left hanging.
Yeah. So we want to specify to the this is for the Public Design Commission. I know it's a little compartmentalized, but this is for their design. And we should keep in those concerns in the resolution.
And the Public Design Commission is weighing in because it's publicly owned property.
And especially, but especially the aspects that are within PDC's purview. I mean, that so that they know what we saw, what we liked, and what we didn't like. Tell them what we didn't like within the resolution. But I didn't see anything tonight that would said that we shouldn't. We should send a letter not supporting the resolution.
And if I may, I think some of the reluctance, and a lot of the reluctance primarily stems from two different things. One is historically, we either get stonewalled from the EDC, or anything that we request we don't get, number one. And number two, in the agreements that EDC makes with the various entities that end up making them, the entity, whether they want to abide by what we're requesting or not, are either unable to based on the agreement or legally can't. And so we're kind of put in this this really bad position where you're never going to get the information you want. And, it's viewed, how should we say, less than favorably when you vote in favor of something where you're not going to get this later. And so that's kind of where I think a lot of the mixed feelings are, regardless of the fact of whether you agree with the project or not in moving it forward. And so I think there's like three separate pots of problems that, we're kind of facing with this. And I don't mean to be speaking for anybody on this particular issue, but that's kind of my sense of what's going on. And I don't know how we address that, because, I'm personally conflicted with it, where it seems like, the tenant, Steiner Studios, wants to do these things. Granted, they also signed a deal with the EDC and they may not be able to, or, I don't know if I'm explaining it well, but I guess you can kind of see where I'm coming from a little bit.
Well, I know there's a lot here, and then we're charged with. Well, we're not charged with anything, but we have been asked to send a resolution in support of an application to the PDC from Steiner Studios. These separate but adjacent issues, we have to decide whether we're going to not give them that, because we're not going to give them a resolution because of all these separate issues, most of which are, overlap with Steiner Studios, or are separate from them. I mean, we have to think about what we didn't like about Steiner Studios public design presentation. What didn't we like about it? We can list off a couple of things. The trucks, the opting out of donating any excess energy from the solar panels to the community, although I don't know exactly what that would look like.
You could say, not sharing labor information, or
unable
to.
Is that PDC? That PDC stuff? No,
No, but I mean,
It's process stuff,
yeah.
I mean, the design elements that were principal to me were the perimeter treatment, the green wall, the massing of the buildings, generally maintaining the view corridor down the cross streets, a minimum of what looked like sort of not street level, but their new grade level parking, and then a contained parking facility. I'm very curious about the sort of unknown mural treatment. It looks like it would be partly visible above, like the wall that the murals were depicted on would be sort of half vertically obscured by the green wall. As I'm very concerned about the experience of park goers perceiving the thing, so I like the buffer zone. I was very curious about that water going, not to CSO, but directly, the drain. That's a DEP question, not a design question. The loss of the red brick building is I feel it, but the creation of new buildings that don't look like glassy, condo towers in the suburbs is a plus.
So look,
I saw a lot to like. There's plenty to like. Say, well, how exactly is that going to turn out? But in principle, the massing and the placement of the buildings seems in harmony with the original intent of the lot.
So here's what we can have as a resolution. We can say that Steiner Studios presented to the community board. We can say even in as many words as Dave used, there's a lot that we liked. but we have the following concerns. I mean, that's all we have to say, and then we can list them out. I mean, and the PDC can take that. I mean, all I'm asking is that when we write this resolution, we write it for our audience, which is the PDC, and not necessarily another agency that deals with other aspects, such as consumer affairs or whatever we'd be writing to about workforce development or things like that. Okay. So is there any discussion on sending a letter, sending a resolution to the New York City Public Design Commission, simply to state the facts of tonight's meeting and the concerns expressed? Is everyone good with that? If you're not, just raise your hand and we'll discuss it.
I have to say that I'm not eligible to vote because of the permit I have with EDC. So
I know you should just have a sign for that. You never vote. That's fine. It's fine.
Okay, but I kind of there are the fact that like the red brick buildings are coming in, I feel torn about losing the historic buildings, but I kind of I just want to echo what David had to say, because I think there's a lot of good in this proposal, and but I have similar questions as some of you regarding accountability.
Don't let those questions, any resolution won't go out until after the board meeting. But if you have any of those questions and you can succinctly put them in so they can be dropped into a resolution, please email Jeremy, who ultimately writes these. That's it. I think I'm going to take a vote. If anyone doesn't want to write this resolution as it's been stated, or has questions about the resolution that we will recommend to the entire board to vote on, just raise your hand now, or just speak up, since we're a small group, and let me know. Other than that, I'll consider this vote that we resolve to write PDC of our concerns about the project, and we will also give them, what we like about development of the waterfront, the workforce development, things like that, the promise of that. But we have concerns that these things will happen, including the design, including, like I said, like everything we could have talked about, we could put in there, such as the view shed and things like that as well. Okay. All right, guys, any new business or old business before we end this? New business?
Can I make a happy announcement of what could be considered new business and on the front of economic development? The Sunset Park bid will produce a September 26th 15-block street festival between 44th and 60th Street, as we have every year for the last 22 years, except 9/11 and this last year. So we're back. The reason I mention it in this context is it's primarily intended to support the small shops who all get first dibs on the space in front of their, whether it's a restaurant or retail, whatever, they all get to use the space in front of their business before an outside vendor is allowed to come in. And we will have vaccine buses and public service opportunities for anyone on this call who works with community service organizations. I invite you to just fill out the application and get a spot so we can get you visible on the avenue on Sunday, September 26th, all day.
Thank you. Good news. Climbing back. All right. So with that, we're going to end it up. I'll see you guys in, I guess, next week, next Wednesday. Not this coming Wednesday. Happy New Year to some of you guys, and everyone else. Happy fall. Bye-bye.
Good night,
everyone. Thanks, Dan. Have a good night.
Good night.
Bye, everybody.
bye.